You just landed in the United States. You are tired. You want to get home. And then a CBP officer says something that makes your stomach drop. Please unlock your phone. What most travelers do in that moment can create a problem that lasts months or years, especially if you are a visa holder, a student, a worker, or a green card holder who travels a lot. In the next few minutes, you will understand three things. First, what CBP is actually allowed to do at the airport and what the common myths get wrong. Second, which travelers face the biggest consequences if they refuse or if they say the wrong thing. And third, a simple, calm script you can use to protect your position without escalating the situation. Here's the part most people miss. At the border, the rules are not the same as inside the United States. The airport inspection area is a different legal environment, and the practical reality is that decisions happen fast, with high stakes, and often with little time to call anyone. So we are going to keep this practical, not dramatic. And we are going to separate what we can verify from what is often exaggerated online. First, what do we know for sure? CBP has published guidance saying it has authority to search electronic devices at the border. CBP also distinguishes between different types of device searches, often described as a basic search and a more advanced search. In general terms, a basic search is when an officer looks through what is on the device manually, and an advanced search involves connecting equipment to the device to review, copy, or analyze content. The exact details can change as CBP updates directives and web pages, so you should treat any single PDF as possibly outdated and check the main CBP Search Authority page for the current language. What we cannot responsibly claim without your exact situation is this: that one specific phrase will guarantee you cannot be detained, that airplane mode will magically block all access, or that refusing a password always ends well. Those are the viral claims that get people in trouble. This is where people get denied. They watch a clip that was aimed at US citizens, and they apply it as a script while traveling on a temporary visa. Now, let us talk about why CBP asks for passwords in the first place. At ports of entry, CBP is screening for admissibility and for violations of US law, including immigration-related issues. A phone can contain evidence of your purpose of travel, your intent, your work history, your communications, and your ties. The goal of this video is not to help anyone hide wrongdoing. The goal is to help lawful travelers reduce unnecessary exposure, avoid accidental misunderstandings, and communicate clearly. Microhook. Two groups are at the highest risk when a device request happens, and one of them is not who you think. Group 1 is temporary visitors and temporary visa holders, tourists, business visitors, students, exchange visitors, and many workers. For these travelers, admission is discretionary in a very real way. If CBP believes you are not eligible to enter, you can be refused admission, sent back, or pressured into withdrawing your application for admission. Group 2 is lawful permanent residents who have complicated travel patterns or old issues that trigger deeper review. Many green card holders enter with no problems, but if there is something that raises questions, device requests can happen in secondary. Who is least likely to be refused entry purely for not unlocking? US citizens. A US citizen generally cannot be denied entry to the United States for refusing to unlock a phone. But, and this is important, that does not mean the experience will be quick or pleasant. It can mean delays, questioning, and potentially seizure of the device depending on the circumstances. Now, let us do a quick myth versus reality, because this is where online advice goes off the rails. Myth: CBP can always force you to give your password. Reality: the legal landscape is complicated, and it can depend on status, circumstances, and sometimes court rulings in your region. Practically, CBP may request access and can create consequences for non-cooperation, especially for non-citizens seeking entry. The safest framing is, they may ask, you can choose to consent or not, but the consequences of refusing are not equal for everyone. Myth: if you refuse, you automatically get deported. Reality: for US citizens, refusal does not mean deportation. For visa holders, refusal can lead to refusal of admission or other negative outcomes, but it is not an automatic, guaranteed result every time. The problem is, you do not get to choose how strict that officer will be that day, and you do not get a long time to debate it. Myth: airplane mode blocks CBP from seeing anything. Reality: airplane mode may reduce live connections, but it does not remove what is already stored on the device. And it does not guarantee your device cannot connect to anything if settings allow Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to be turned back on. Also, cloud-linked apps may still show cached content already downloaded. So airplane mode can be one layer of a broader privacy plan, not a magic shield. Now the big question: basic search versus advanced search. In plain English, a basic search is when an officer scrolls through what is on the phone. An advanced search is more technical, using external tools. CBP has stated it uses advanced searches in more limited circumstances, and it describes safeguards like supervisory approval in its policies. But here is the part most people miss: you do not control which one it becomes. Your behavior, your answers, and inconsistencies in your story can escalate a routine inspection into a deeper one. So who is affected and who is not? Let us do clear buckets. Most affected: travelers seeking admission on a temporary basis. If you are entering on a visitor visa or ESTA, if you are an international student returning to school, or if you are a worker on a temporary status, you should assume that a device refusal can be interpreted as lack of cooperation. It does not mean you must hand over everything with no boundaries, but you should go in knowing the leverage is not equal. Also affected: travelers with sensitive but lawful facts that are easy to misread. Examples include messages about helping a family business that could look like unauthorized work, group chats discussing political events that could trigger extra questioning, or private photos and contacts that you do not want copied or misunderstood. Less affected but still impacted: U.S. citizens, because entry is not supposed to be denied, but detention, delays, and device seizure are still possible. And even if you are a citizen, your phone can contain other people's information: a spouse on a visa, a friend on a student status, clients, or coworkers. Not the same issue: travelers already inside the U.S. dealing with ordinary domestic law enforcement. This video is about CBP at ports of entry, not what happens at a traffic stop in your city. Microhook: a small detail changes everything, and it is the difference between intent and evidence. At the border, officers are trying to understand your intent. Are you truly visiting for tourism, or are you planning to work? Are you truly returning to resume school, or are you not attending and using the visa to live in the U.S.? Are you truly coming for a short business meeting, or are you actually doing work that requires authorization? Phones can contain messages that look like evidence of intent. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are jokes or misunderstandings. Your goal is to reduce ambiguity. Now, why is this happening more often? A few practical forces. 1. More of our lives are on our phones, so phones are a rich source of information. 2. Agencies have increased focus on fraud prevention, overstays, and misuse of categories. 3. There is a backlog and pressure to make decisions quickly at the point of entry. And 4. Travelers are often unprepared, so they say too much, argue, or become inconsistent. Let me give you an example scenario. This is a composite, not a real person. Example scenario 1. An international student returns after winter break. In the phone, there is a message to a friend saying, "I might pick up some shifts to pay rent." The student means on-campus work or a future authorized option. But CBP could interpret it as intent to work without authorization. The student panics and starts explaining, changes the story, and then says, "Actually, I do not know if I am going back to school this semester." That last sentence is what creates the biggest issue, because it directly contradicts the purpose of entry. Here is the takeaway. The phone is not always the problem. The inconsistent story is. Now, another example scenario. Example scenario 2. A visitor is coming to see family for 3 weeks. In WhatsApp messages, there are discussions about helping an uncle with his store, just for a few days. The traveler thinks it is harmless, but unauthorized work can be a serious issue, even if unpaid, depending on facts. If the officer sees those messages, it can trigger a refusal of admission. Microhook. Here is where people get denied. They say the right word in the wrong context. Now let us address the viral claim that someone was deported for saying the right thing. I cannot verify any specific story from your prompt. and you should be extremely skeptical of single anecdotes used to sell a product or a channel. But the general pattern is real. When a traveler treats CBP like a debate, the interaction escalates. Saying, "I know my rights," can be true, but if it is said aggressively, it can lead to more scrutiny. The goal is not to waive all rights. The goal is to preserve them while still being cooperative and calm. So what should you do when the officer asks for your password? We are going to talk about 3 practical shields. Not magic, not guaranteed, but realistic layers that can reduce harm. Shield 1. Status awareness, especially citizenship. If you are a U.S. citizen, you can be firm that you do not consent to a search while still remaining respectful. If you are a non-citizen seeking admission, you should assume the consequences of refusal can be much more serious. That does not mean you must automatically comply, but it does mean you should think strategically. A simple way to remember it: citizens can usually argue rights with lower risk of being turned away. Visa holders are often judged on admissibility and cooperation in real time. Shield 2. Connectivity awareness, the airplane mode question. If your concern is cloud data, remember that many apps sync automatically. Airplane mode may reduce immediate syncing, but it is not foolproof. The safer, more accurate approach is prepare before you fly. If there is sensitive data that is not needed for the trip, consider removing it from the device, logging out of accounts, or traveling with a cleaner device profile. That is not about hiding wrongdoing. It is about minimizing exposure of private, lawful information. A practical tip: do not rely on last-second toggles at the inspection counter. If you are going to use airplane mode as a privacy layer, it should be set before you arrive at the inspection area. But again, do not treat it as a guarantee. Shield 3. Verbal non-consent. This is the one many travelers miss. Even if you decide to comply under pressure, you can still communicate that you are not voluntarily consenting. This can matter for preserving your position later. The key is tone. Calm, polite, short. Here is a simple 3-sentence script you can memorize. Adjust for your situation. Sentence 1. Officer, I want to comply with instructions, but I do not consent to a search of my device. Sentence 2. If you require access, I am providing it under protest and under compulsion. Sentence 3. Am I free to leave, or am I being detained for further inspection? Notice what this script does. It does not accuse. It does not argue. It does not lecture. It communicates non-consent, shows you are not obstructing, and asks a clear procedural question. Now, important caution. Do not lie, do not delete evidence during inspection, and do not obstruct physically. If you are asked a question, answer truthfully. If you do not know, say you do not know. If you need to clarify, clarify, but do not guess. Microhook. If you are in one specific group, your best move is not refusal, it is preparation. If you are a temporary visa holder, the highest impact move is not to win a legal argument at the counter. It is to reduce the chance the request happens and reduce what can be misunderstood if it does. That means travel with consistent documentation, consistent answers, and a device that does not contain confusing signals about intent. Let us do another myth versus reality. Myth. If you say, "I do not consent," they must stop. Reality. At the border, they may continue with inspection steps depending on their authority and circumstances. Non-consent is about preserving your position, not instantly ending the interaction. Myth. Only criminals get searched. Reality. Many lawful travelers are selected for secondary for random reasons: travel patterns, name matches, or incomplete information. It is not always personal. Now let us talk about the real-world consequences so you can make an informed choice. For visitors and visa holders, refusing to unlock can lead to being sent to secondary, a longer interview, possible refusal of admission, or pressure to withdraw. It can also create a record that affects future travel. For green card holders, it can lead to delays, device seizure, and deeper questioning about residence and ties. For U.S. citizens, it can mean delay and possible device seizure, but not lawful denial of entry in most cases. Another consequence people ignore: device seizure time. If CBP keeps your phone, you may lose access to two-factor authentication, work accounts, school portals, boarding passes, family communications, and even medical information. That can create cascading harm even when nothing improper is found. So one practical action is to plan for that possibility by having backup access methods that do not require the phone itself. Now, if you decide to comply, here is how to reduce risk without creating a scene. 1. Ask what type of search is being requested and whether it is basic or advanced. The officer may not explain in detail, but asking calmly signals you are paying attention. 2. State your non-consent verbally, using the script, even if you comply. 3. Do not volunteer extra commentary while they look. Silence is not disrespect. Short, factual answers are best. 4. Do not hand over passwords to accounts you cannot see them logging into, if you can avoid it. If you are asked to unlock the device, unlocking is different from giving a written password. But practices vary, and again, your leverage differs by status. The point is, understand what you are doing. 5. If an officer requests you to log into email or social media, recognize that this can expose far more than what is stored on the device. This is where cloud access becomes the real issue. If you are uncomfortable, ask if there is an alternative and clearly state you do not consent, but do not lie. Now we get to the most useful part, your before every flight checklist. This is the part you should save and share. Do this. Do a consistency check the day before travel. Your stated purpose of entry, your documents, your itinerary, and your phone messages should not contradict each other. Carry core documents in a separate folder. For example, school enrollment evidence for students, employer letters for workers, return ticket and hotel for visitors. Examples only. Use what fits your category. Reduce unnecessary sensitive data on the travel device. Log out of accounts you do not need, remove old files you do not need, and consider using a separate travel profile. Turn on strong device security before travel. Passcode, encryption, and updated software. Plan for device loss. Print key confirmations, store emergency numbers offline, and have a way to access critical accounts without the phone. Avoid this. Avoid joking texts about working, moving permanently, or doing anything outside your status. Jokes get read literally at the border. Avoid inconsistent statements like, "I am just visiting, but also, I might look for a job." That is a red flag. Avoid arguing about legal theory in the inspection line. Keep it calm and procedural. Avoid deleting content during inspection or after you are pulled aside. That can look like obstruction. Avoid carrying other people's confidential data if you do not need it. Microhook. This next part can save you hours in secondary. If you are pulled into secondary, your goal is to de-escalate. Sit. Breathe. Answer only what is asked. Ask for clarification if needed. If you need an interpreter, request one. If you want to speak to an attorney, you can ask, but understand that access and timing can be limited at the port of entry, especially for non-citizens. The practical move is to avoid making things worse while preserving your position. Now, what could happen next in this area? Watch points. 1. CBP updates to directives and guidance. Even small language changes can alter how officers describe basic and advanced searches. 2. Court challenges and policy debates. Digital privacy at the border is an active topic, and outcomes can vary by jurisdiction. 3. Shifts in enforcement priorities. During certain periods, there is more scrutiny on particular fraud patterns, overstays, or categories. That can indirectly increase device requests. 4. More travelers using encryption and privacy tools. That can push agencies to adjust procedures. The result can be more questions, not fewer, if an officer feels they cannot verify intent. Here is another myth versus reality to close the loop. Myth: if you have nothing to hide, you should hand over everything. Reality: privacy is not the same as wrongdoing. You can have lawful, sensitive information, medical records, attorney communications, family issues, political opinions, or confidential work data. You can care about privacy and still be a lawful traveler. The best approach is not panic, it is preparation. Let us do a calm recap with 5 takeaways. 1. CBP has stated it can search electronic devices at the border, and it distinguishes between basic and advanced searches in its policies. 2. The consequences of refusing are not equal. U.S. citizens generally cannot be denied entry for refusal, but visa holders can face refusal of admission or other serious outcomes. 3. Airplane mode is not a magic shield. It may reduce connectivity, but it does not guarantee cloud data is inaccessible, and it does not erase what is already on the phone. 4. A polite non-consent statement can help preserve your position, whether you refuse or comply. Keep it short and respectful. 5. The biggest protection is pre-travel planning, consistent documents, consistent story, and minimizing unnecessary data on your travel device. Do not panic. Most people enter the US every day without any device search at all. But if it happens to you, you want to be the person who is calm, prepared, and hard to misunderstand. If you want more videos like this, focused on practical immigration and travel rules without fear-mongering, subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you have a question about your travel category, drop it in the comments in a general way without sharing private details, and I will cover the most common scenarios in a future video.